Chapter 1. The Perfect Lie. Mark Richard had always believed in routine. Every Sunday morning, he'd wake at 6:30, brew a pot of dark roast coffee, and review architectural blueprints at the kitchen table while the house remained silent. At 38, he'd built a successful career designing custom homes throughout New England, work that demanded precision, patience, and the ability to see what others couldn't. This particular Sunday in October felt no different. Sunlight filtered through the bay windows of their colonial-style home in suburban Massachusetts, casting geometric shadows across the hardwood floors. Mark studied the elevation drawings for the Morrison project, making notes about load-bearing modifications, when he heard footsteps upstairs. His daughter, Rose, named after his late grandmother, was already awake. At 10 years old, she'd inherited his methodical nature and Elizabeth's dark curls. Mark heard the shower running, then silence, then the familiar pattern of Rose getting ready. Today was Hazel Christensen's birthday party, a sleepover event that Rose had been anticipating for weeks. Elizabeth Richard, named Massey, emerged from the master bedroom at 7:45, her timing impeccable as always. At 36, she maintained the same athletic build she'd had when they met 12 years ago. Her auburn hair was pulled back in a neat ponytail, and she wore her usual weekend attire: designer jeans and a cashmere sweater that probably cost more than Mark's entire wardrobe. "Morning," she said, kissing his cheek with practiced affection. "Is Rose ready? I need to drop her off by 9. "She's getting dressed," Mark replied, not looking up from his drawings. "The Christensen's address is already in your phone." Elizabeth poured herself coffee, black, no sugar, always, and checked her phone with the focused intensity of someone expecting important news. Over the years, Mark had learned not to question her frequent phone checks. She worked as a consultant for an international humanitarian organization, traveling frequently to coordinate adoption services for families. The work kept her busy, often away for days at a time, but she claimed it was fulfilling. Mark had stopped asking questions about her work 5 years ago, after she'd snapped at him for not understanding the complexity of international family law. He'd retreated into his own career, into his relationship with Rose, and into the comfortable fiction that his marriage was solid even if it wasn't passionate. Rose bounded down the stairs at 8:30, a purple overnight bag slung over her shoulder. She wore her favorite denim jacket, the one covered in patches she'd collected, and her eyes sparkled with excitement. "Ready, sweetie?" Elizabeth asked, her voice warm in a way it rarely was when addressing Mark. "So ready." Hazel said they're doing a movie marathon and making homemade pizza. Rose hugged Mark tightly. "Love you, Dad. See you tomorrow afternoon." "Love you too, Rosie. Be good." Mark watched them leave, Elizabeth's BMW backing smoothly out of the driveway. The house felt hollow in their absence. Mark returned to his blueprints, but concentration eluded him. Instead, he found himself wandering through rooms he'd helped design 7 years ago when they built this place. For bedrooms, 3.5 baths, an open-concept kitchen with marble countertops that Elizabeth had insisted upon. Every detail reflected her taste more than his. He'd grown up in a cramped apartment in South Boston, the only child of a single mother who'd worked double shifts as a nurse. Architecture had been his escape, drawing buildings, imagining spaces where people could feel safe and whole. He'd put himself through MIT on scholarships and student loans, graduated top of his class, and joined a prestigious firm at 26. He'd met Elizabeth at a gallery opening in Boston's South End. She'd been vibrant, sophisticated, passionate about her humanitarian work. She'd told him stories about reuniting families, about orphaned children finding homes. He'd fallen hard and fast, believing he'd found someone who cared about making the world better. They'd married within a year. Rose arrived 2 years later, and for a while, Mark had felt complete. But gradually, Elizabeth had become distant. More travel, more late nights, more secrets. Mark had convinced himself it was normal, that all marriages settled into comfortable distance. The day passed slowly. Mark worked on blueprints, went for a run, watched a Patriots game without really seeing it. He ordered Thai food for dinner and ate alone at the kitchen table, scrolling through his phone with the ambient loneliness of a man who'd forgotten what connection felt like. His phone buzzed at 7:30 that evening. Rose's name appeared on the screen. Unusual, since she typically called only if something was wrong. "Hey, sweetie. Everything okay?" "Dad." Rose's voice was tight, controlled in that way children sound when they're trying not to cry in front of others. Can you pick me up? Mark sat up straighter. What's wrong? Are you feeling sick? I need to come home. Please. Something in her tone activated every protective instinct Mark possessed. I'll be there in 15 minutes. He grabbed his keys and drove faster than he should have through the quiet suburban streets. The Christensen house was a modern farmhouse style, all white siding and black shutters, with cars still parked in the circular driveway. The party was clearly still going. Mark could see lights and hear laughter from inside. Rose was waiting on the front porch, her overnight bag clutched to her chest. Her face was pale, her eyes red-rimmed. Mark jumped out of his car and jogged to her. Rosie, what happened? She shook her head, glancing back at the house. Behind her, the front door opened, and Nicholas Strickland emerged. Hazel's father, a detective with the Massachusetts State Police whom Mark had met briefly at school events. Mark, Nicholas said, his voice careful. Can we talk? Rose grabbed Mark's hand, squeezing hard. I told Mr. Strickland I just wanted to go home. Nicholas exchanged a look with Mark, one that communicated something serious, something adult, something Rose shouldn't hear. Maybe that's best. Rose, honey, tell Hazel I'll explain later, okay? Rose nodded and practically ran to Mark's car. Mark followed more slowly, his chest tight with growing dread. Nicholas, what's going on? The detective stepped closer, lowering his voice. Your daughter showed me something. A video. I think you need to see it, but not here. Not now. He paused. Mark, I've worked a lot of cases. What I saw, you need to be smart about what happens next. What kind of video? The kind that ends marriages and starts investigations. Nicholas's jaw was set. Go home. Talk to your daughter. Then call me. He pressed a business card into Mark's hand. And Mark, whatever you're feeling when you see it, don't do anything stupid. Not yet. Mark drove home in silence. Rose sitting rigid in the passenger seat, staring out the window. When they pulled into the driveway, she finally spoke. Daddy, promise me something first. What, sweetie? You won't tell Mom I told you. Mark's hands tightened on the steering wheel. Rose. She pulled out her phone with shaking hands. Mr. Strickland, he's a police officer. He saw Mom somewhere. He sent this video to show you. She held out the phone. He said you need to know. Mark took the phone, his heart hammering. The video was time-stamped from 3 days ago, shot from a surveillance camera angle, grainy, but clear enough. The footage showed Elizabeth in what appeared to be a warehouse, lit by harsh fluorescent lights. She wasn't alone. A man Mark didn't recognize stood beside her, tall, well-dressed, with silver hair and an expression of cold authority. Between them, sitting on metal chairs with the blank, traumatized stares of the deeply frightened, were 4 children, none older than 12. Elizabeth was checking paperwork, her manner clinical and efficient. The silver-haired man spoke to someone off camera. One of the children, a little girl maybe 7 years old, stood up, and Elizabeth grabbed her arm roughly, forcing her back into the chair. The child's face crumpled in fear, but no sound came through the surveillance audio. The video continued for 90 seconds. Children were led away in pairs. Money was exchanged, thick envelopes passed between hands. Elizabeth counted bills with the practiced ease of someone who'd done this many times before. Mark's hand started shaking so hard, he nearly dropped the phone. Everything he thought he knew shattered like glass. His wife, the woman who claimed to reunite families, was tearing them apart. The humanitarian work was a cover. The international travel was trafficking. The distant behavior was guilt, or more likely, the absence of conscience. And Rose, who looked so much like Elizabeth. Rose, who'd been adopted through Elizabeth's organization. Rose, whose original birth certificate Mark had never actually seen. The room spun. Mark grabbed the edge of the kitchen table, his breath coming in ragged gasps. Rose was watching him with tears streaming down her face. This little girl who trusted him completely, who'd just shown him evidence that could destroy their entire world. Daddy, Rose whispered. Are those kids, are they being hurt? Mark's mind raced through implications, through dangers, through the realization that if Elizabeth was part of something this organized, this calculated, then they were all in danger. People who trafficked children didn't just let witnesses walk away. If Elizabeth realized Rose knew, if she thought Mark knew, he stood abruptly, his architect's mind suddenly reconstructing everything with new, terrible clarity. The emergency bag. He kept an emergency bag in the basement, a habit from his paranoid mother, who'd always preached preparedness. Cash, documents, clean clothes, first aid supplies. He'd maintained it out of habit, never thinking he'd actually need it. "Rose," he said, his voice steadier than he felt. "I need you to trust me, okay?" She nodded, wiping her eyes. "Go upstairs. Pack another bag. Clothes for 3 days. Your favorite stuffed animal. Your journal. Nothing else." "Dad, what?" "Now, Rosie. Fast as you can." While Rose thundered upstairs, Mark moved with sudden, focused purpose. He grabbed the emergency bag from the basement storage room. Checked the cash, $3,000 in 20s and 50s. Grabbed the folder with their important documents, Rose's birth certificate, the one he needed to examine closer, his passport, their social security cards, bank records. His phone buzzed. Elizabeth's name appeared. He stared at it. This person he'd shared a bed with for 11 years. This stranger who'd been living a monstrous lie. He didn't answer. Another text came through. "Where are you? Why did you pick up Rose?" Mark powered off his phone. Rose appeared at the top of the stairs, a backpack over her shoulders. "Dad, I'm scared." "I know, sweetie. But we're going to be okay." Mark grabbed his car keys, the emergency bag, and Rose's hand. "We're leaving. Now." "Where?" "Somewhere safe. Somewhere we can figure out what to do next." As they backed out of the driveway, Mark glanced once more at the house, their house, with its perfect architecture and its perfect lie. In the rearview mirror, headlights turned onto their street. Elizabeth was coming home. Mark pressed the accelerator and drove into the October night, his daughter beside him, both of them refugees from a life that had never been real. Chapter 2. The Truth Unfolds. Mark drove for 2 hours straight, taking random turns, doubling back, using every counter-surveillance technique he'd absorbed from thriller novels and common sense. Rose had fallen asleep against the window by the time he finally pulled into a budget-in off-Route 2, far enough from home that Elizabeth wouldn't think to look immediately. The night clerk barely glanced up as Mark paid cash for a room. "Name?" Mark hesitated for only a second. "Anderson Floyd." The clerk slid a key card across the desk. "Room 217. Checkouts at 11. The room was exactly what Mark expected. 2 double beds with threadbare comforters, a TV bolted to a particle board dresser, industrial carpet that had seen better decades. But the door locked, and the window overlooked the parking lot where Mark could see his car. Rose woke as he carried their bags inside. "Where are we?" "Somewhere safe for tonight." Mark set her bag on the bed nearest the bathroom. "Are you hungry?" She shook her head, then contradicted herself. "Maybe a little." Mark found a vending machine down the hall and returned with chips, crackers, and 2 bottles of water. They sat on Rose's bed, eating in silence, the weight of what they'd seen pressing down on them both. Finally, Rose spoke. "The video. Those kids. They looked so scared." "I know. Is she a bad person?" Mark had never lied to his daughter about important things, and he wasn't going to start now. "What she's doing is very, very wrong. Those children shouldn't be there. She shouldn't be part of that." Mr. Strickland said he recognized Mom from an investigation. He said he wasn't supposed to show anyone that video, but when he saw me at Hazel's party, he thought. Rose's voice cracked. "He thought I should be safe. He said sometimes the people closest to bad things don't know they're in danger." Mark pulled her close. "You did the right thing showing me. You were so brave. Are we going to the police?" "I don't know yet. I need to think." Mark rubbed his face, exhaustion and adrenaline warring in his system. "Rose, I need to ask you something, and I need you to tell me the truth. Has she ever done anything that made you uncomfortable? Asked you to keep secrets? Taken you places that felt wrong?" Rose thought about it, her face scrunched in concentration. "Sometimes she'd take me to her office and make me wait in the car. She said it was boring inside, but one time I saw her come out with a little boy. He was crying, and Mom looked angry. She told me later he was just being difficult about going to his new family." Mark's blood ran cold. "Did you see where they went?" "They got in a black van. There was a man driving. He had gray hair and a mean face." "The man from the video. The silver-haired one." Mark needed information, needed to understand the scope of what Elizabeth was involved in. He pulled out his laptop and connected to the motel's Wi-Fi, ignoring every cybersecurity principle he'd ever learned. Desperate times. "Rose, do you remember the name of Mom's company?" "Her organization. Global Family Solutions. Rose said immediately. She has business cards in her purse. Mark searched the name. The website was professionally designed, full of smiling families and heartwarming testimonials. Services included international adoption consulting, family reunification, humanitarian aid coordination. The leadership page showed Elizabeth's professional headshot alongside the title Regional Director, Eastern Operations. The CEO and founder was listed as Major Welch, age 62, former military, extensive international experience. Mark clicked through page after page, looking for something, anything, that revealed the truth beneath the polished surface. He found an address, a building in Boston's Seaport District, professional offices, legitimate-looking documentation, tax records showing Global Family Solutions as a registered 501c3 nonprofit. It was the perfect cover. Mark searched for Major Welch and found surprisingly little. A few old news articles about military service, a mention in connection with refugee resettlement programs in Eastern Europe in the late 90s, then nothing for years until Global Family Solutions appeared 5 years ago. 5 years ago, right when Elizabeth had become increasingly distant. Mark's phone, still powered off, sat on the nightstand like a loaded weapon. He knew what he'd find if he turned it on. Messages from Elizabeth, probably frantic by now, demanding to know where they were. Maybe threats. Maybe lies. Dad, Rose's voice was small. Can I ask you something? Anything. Am I really yours? Like really, really? The question hung in the air, the unspoken fear that had been building since the moment Mark saw that video. He'd never questioned Rose's origins. Elizabeth had handled the adoption, had explained that her connections through work made the process smooth and quick. A private adoption, she'd said. A young mother who couldn't keep the baby. All perfectly legal. Mark had wanted a child so badly, had been so grateful, that he'd never pushed for details. Now those details screamed at him from the shadows. You're my daughter, Mark said firmly. No matter what. That will never change. But what if? Rose couldn't finish the sentence. Mark grabbed the emergency folder and pulled out Rose's birth certificate. He'd looked at it 100 times, filed it for school registrations and passport applications without really seeing it. He saw it now. The document listed Elizabeth Massey Richard as mother. It listed Mark Richard as father. The hospital was in Vermont, a small private facility that Mark had never visited. The attending physician's name was Dr. Ismail Stafford. Mark searched for Dr. Stafford. The results sent ice through his veins. Dr. Ismail Stafford had lost his medical license 8 years ago for falsifying medical records. He'd been connected to an adoption fraud case in Vermont, but had never been convicted due to insufficient evidence. He disappeared from public records after that. Mark pulled up Rose's birth certificate again, examining it with his architect's eye for detail. The paper stock was good. The seal looked legitimate. But the spacing on the text was slightly off, the font not quite matching other Vermont birth certificates he could find online. It was a forgery. Rose, Mark said quietly. I need you to close your eyes and try to remember the first thing you remember. The earliest memory you have. Rose screwed up her face in thought. I remember being in a big room with lots of other kids. We were sleeping on mats on the floor. I remember being hungry and cold. Her eyes opened. I always thought that was a dream. How old do you think you were? Little. Maybe 4. 4 years old. Rose was 10 now. Elizabeth had claimed to adopt her when she was an infant. But if Rose's memories were real, do you remember anything else about that place? A lady with short black hair. She was nice to me. She gave me extra food once. Rose's face suddenly lit with recognition. Dad, I've seen her. When Mom took me to her office a few times, there was a lady there with short black hair. Same lady. I'm sure of it. The pieces were connecting in Mark's mind, forming a picture more horrifying than he'd imagined. Elizabeth hadn't adopted Rose through legitimate channels. She'd taken her from somewhere, a trafficking operation, a kidnapping ring, something organized and ongoing. And Rose, his precious daughter, was evidence of a crime. If Elizabeth and her partners knew Rose could identify them, could testify about what she'd seen as a child. Mark's hands clenched into fists. The protective rage that flooded through him was almost overwhelming. They'd made his daughter complicit in their crimes without her knowledge. They'd put her in danger. They'd built their sick operation on the stolen lives of children. And Elizabeth had come home every night, kissed Rose goodnight, pretended to be a mother. Rose, I want you to do something for me. Mark kept his voice calm, controlled. I want you to write down everything you can remember about that place. Every detail, no matter how small. Can you do that? Rose nodded and pulled out her journal, setting to work with the focused determination she'd inherited from him. While she wrote, Mark turned his laptop screen away and searched for information on child trafficking operations in New England. What he found was sparse but chilling, a network that federal investigators had been tracking for years, moving children from Eastern Europe and South America through a complex web of false documents and fraudulent adoption services. The investigation, codenamed Operation Shepherd, had resulted in a few low-level arrests but no major convictions. The leadership remained untouchable, hidden behind layers of legitimate-looking nonprofits and international organizations. Mark searched for Major Welch again, this time adding keywords like trafficking and investigation. He found one news article from 6 months ago, buried in the archives of a Boston Globe investigation. Former military officer named in federal probe of adoption fraud. Major Welch, CEO of Global Family Solutions, denies all allegations. The article was thin on details, citing ongoing investigations and anonymous sources. But it mentioned a federal prosecutor who'd been building a case. Assistant U.S. Attorney Kathleen Walsh. Mark memorized the name. His phone buzzed, even powered off. The vibration was perceptible. He looked at Rose, who'd finished writing and was watching him with eyes too old for her age. What are we going to do? She asked. Mark thought about Nicholas Strickland's warning. Don't do anything stupid. The detective was right. Going to the police without understanding the full scope would be dangerous. If Global Family Solutions had operated for 5 years without prosecution, they had protections. Money. Lawyers. Maybe even people inside law enforcement. But Mark had something they didn't expect. Information they didn't know he had. Rose's memories. The video from Nicholas. His own observations of Elizabeth's behavior over the years. And he had motivation they couldn't match. They were criminals protecting a business. He was a father protecting his daughter. We're going to be smart, Mark said. We're going to gather everything we need to take them down. And we're going to make sure you're safe first, before anything else. How? Mark smiled for the first time since seeing the video. It wasn't a warm smile. I'm an architect, Rosie. I design things. I see how structures work, where the weak points are, how to make things fall. He closed his laptop. I'm going to design their collapse. And Mom. Mark's smile faded. Your mother made her choices. Now she's going to face the consequences. Rose crawled into bed, exhausted by fear and revelation. Mark covered her with the thin motel blanket and turned off the lights. He sat in the chair by the window, watching the parking lot, his mind already constructing the framework of what came next. He'd spent his career building things. Now he was going to tear something down, and he was going to make sure it stayed down. Chapter 3, Blueprint for Destruction. Mark didn't sleep. He sat by the window as Rose's breathing deepened into genuine rest, and he planned. An architect approaches problems systematically. Assess the structure, identify load-bearing elements, understand how removing one piece affects the whole. Mark applied that same methodology to Global Family Solutions and Elizabeth's involvement. The organization was the structure. Major Welch was the foundation. Elizabeth was a load-bearing wall. The children were victims, but also evidence. If Mark could find them, document them, connect them to the people responsible. He needed 3 things: concrete evidence beyond the surveillance video, protection for Rose, and leverage. At 5:30 in the morning, Mark powered on his phone for exactly 90 seconds, long enough to send 2 messages before shutting it down again. The first went to Nicholas Strickland. Need to meet. Safe location. Name the time and place. The second went to an old friend from MIT. Carl. Emergency. Need your expertise. Can you call this number? He included the motel's landline. The phone lit up immediately with missed calls and texts from Elizabeth. 23 messages, increasingly frantic. Where are you? Why did you take Rose from the party? Mark, this isn't funny. Call me. I'm worried. Please respond. If something's wrong, we need to talk about it. The most recent, sent at 4 a.m. I know you know something. Let's be smart about this. The last message confirmed what Mark had suspected. Elizabeth knew the surveillance video existed. She might even know Nicholas had shown it to him, which meant she was already planning her response. Mark powered off the phone and called Nicholas back from the motel landline. The detective answered on the second ring, his voice alert despite the early hour. Mark, I need that meeting. South Shore Plaza. Food court. 7 a.m. There'll be enough people that you'll be safe. Nicholas, what's the scope of what we're dealing with? How big is this thing? A long pause. Bigger than one detective can handle. Major Welch's operation moves somewhere between 50 and 80 children a year through New England alone. Federal authorities have been building a case for 3 years, but it's slow. These people are careful. They have lawyers. Probably have people inside various agencies feeding them information. Why show me the video if the feds are building a case? Because I recognized Rose at that party, and I put together who her mother was, and I realized. Nicholas's voice turned harsh. I realized that kid was living with someone who sells children. And I have a daughter too, Mark. I couldn't let it go. I need everything you have. Documents, surveillance, names. I can't give you an active investigation file. Then give me what you can. Off the record. However you need to do it. Another pause. 7 a.m. Come alone. Leave Rose somewhere safe. Mark hung up and turned to find Rose awake, watching him from the bed. You heard that. She nodded. Are you going to meet him? Yes. But first, we're going to get you somewhere truly safe. Mark had been thinking about this part all night. Rose, you remember Uncle Carl? From your college pictures? The computer guy? He's more than a computer guy. He's one of the smartest people I know, and he lives in New Hampshire, far enough away that Mom won't think to look there. Mark knelt beside her bed. I'm going to ask him to keep you safe for a few days while I handle this. Can you be brave a little longer? Will you come back? I promise. This isn't about leaving you. This is about making sure no one can ever take you away from me. Rose threw her arms around his neck. I love you, Dad. I love you too, Rosie. More than anything. They checked out of the motel at 6:15 and drove north. Mark stopped at a diner for breakfast. Rose needed food, needed normalcy, needed a moment to be a kid. She ordered chocolate chip pancakes and ate mechanically, her mind clearly elsewhere. Carl Day called the diner's payphone at 6:45. Mark had sent him the number before they left the motel. Mark? What's going on? Carl was 42, a cybersecurity consultant who worked from his converted barn in rural New Hampshire. He'd been Mark's roommate at MIT, the guy who could hack anything and had once pranked their entire dormitory by making every computer screen display bad poetry. He'd matured since then, mostly, but retained his brilliant, unconventional mind. I need your help with something serious. And I need you to keep Rose safe for a week, maybe 2. Carl's voice sharpened. How serious? Child trafficking serious. Federal investigation serious. My wife is involved, and Rose and I are in danger. Jesus Christ, Mark. Yes, of course. Bring her here. I'll clear out the guest room. Carl, if anyone comes asking about her, I know how to make people disappear digitally, Mark. That's literally what I do. Bring her. We'll figure out the rest. Mark met Carl at a rest stop off I-93 at 7:15. His old friend looked like he'd rolled out of bed and into his car. Rumpled t-shirt, cargo shorts despite the October chill, messy hair that had gone gray at the temples. Carl took one look at Mark's face and pulled him into a hard hug. We've got this. Whatever it is, we'll handle it. Rose transferred to Carl's beat-up Subaru without complaint, though her eyes were wide with apprehension. Carl squatted down to her level. Hey, Rose. I'm going to teach you everything about computers while you're with me. Deal. Deal, Rose said quietly. Mark hugged his daughter one more time, breathing in the smell of her shampoo, committing the feel of her arms around his neck to memory. I'll call Carl's landline every day. And Rose, if anything feels wrong, if you're scared about anything, you tell Uncle Carl. Okay. Okay, Dad. Watching them drive away was one of the hardest things Mark had ever done. But Rose was safe now, away from Elizabeth and Global Family Solutions. Away from whatever retaliation might come. Mark arrived at South Shore Plaza at 7:50, deliberately late to let Nicholas secure the meeting spot. The food court was moderately busy with early mall walkers and fast food breakfast customers. Nicholas sat at a table near the center, 2 coffee cups in front of him. Mark slid into the seat across from him. Nicholas pushed one coffee over. Where's Rose? Safe. Not with me. Good. Nicholas looked tired, like he hadn't slept either. Mark, I need you to understand something. What I'm about to show you could cost me my job. Maybe worse. I'm doing it because I've got kids, and I can't watch another one get hurt when I have information that could help. I understand. Nicholas pulled out an iPad and opened a folder marked Personal Photos, a decent cover. Inside were scanned documents, surveillance photos, and case notes. This is everything I've compiled that isn't technically part of the official investigation. The feds are running Operation Shepherd through the Boston field office. The lead agent is Assistant U.S. Attorney Kathleen Walsh. She's good, she's thorough, and she's frustrated because Major Welch has lawyered up with the best defense money can buy. Nicholas scrolled through images. Major Welch entering various buildings, Elizabeth meeting with well-dressed people at upscale restaurants, warehouses in industrial areas of Boston and Providence, grainy surveillance shots of children being moved in and out of buildings. The core operation works like this. Global Family Solutions identifies desperate families in Eastern Europe and South America. They promise help, sometimes claiming they'll facilitate legitimate adoptions, sometimes offering money to struggling parents. The children disappear into a network of temporary holding locations. Fake documents get created. Wealthy Americans pay premium prices for what they think are legitimate private adoptions. How much are we talking about? Anywhere from $50,000 to $200,000 per child, depending on age and characteristics the buyers want. Nicholas's jaw tightened. It's disgusting, but it's also brilliant from a criminal perspective. The buyers don't know they're part of trafficking. They think they're paying legal adoption fees. The biological families either think their kids are going to better lives or are too powerless to fight back. And Global Family Solutions looks like a humanitarian organization. Mark studied a photo of Elizabeth standing next to Major Welch outside a brownstone in Boston's Back Bay. She was smiling, relaxed, completely at ease. How many children? In the past 5 years? We estimate between 300 and 400 have been moved through this network. Most are placed with families who have no idea the adoption wasn't legal. Some, Nicholas hesitated. Some end up in worse situations. Define worse. Exploitation. Abuse. We've had 3 cases in the past 2 years where children from suspected trafficking operations turned up in child abuse investigations. The connections are there, but proving chain of custody is nearly impossible because the documents are so well forged. Mark felt sick. And Elizabeth? Your wife is Major Welch's right hand. She handles the New England distribution, finding buyers, coordinating the transfers, managing the documentation. She's been with the organization for 5 years, which means she's been doing this your entire married life. No, Mark thought. Not our entire married life. 5 years ago was when Elizabeth changed. When she became distant. When she started traveling constantly. What turned her? Mark asked. People don't just wake up one day and decide to traffic children. Don't know. Her background checks clean. Came from a middle-class family in Connecticut, good education, legitimate early career in social work. Best guess? Money. Global Family Solutions pays well. Welch's operation moves millions of dollars annually. Nicholas pulled up bank records, more documents he definitely shouldn't have. Your wife has 3 separate offshore accounts. Total balance north of $2 million. $2 million. While Mark worked on blueprints and worried about mortgage payments, Elizabeth had been accumulating wealth built on stolen children. What about Rose? Mark asked the question he'd been dreading. Her adoption. Can you trace it? Nicholas's expression turned sympathetic. I tried. The documentation is too good. But Mark, Rose's approximate age when Elizabeth claimed to adopt her versus the timeline of Global Family Solutions starting up? The math suggests she came through the network. Mark had already reached the same conclusion, but hearing it confirmed felt like a punch to the chest. So she's evidence. She's a victim who survived. And yes, unfortunately, she's also a witness. If prosecutors could find biological families and connect them to children placed through Global Family Solutions, including Rose. Nicholas didn't finish the sentence. Mark understood. Rose's testimony could help convict everyone involved. But it would also mean revealing that Mark had raised a stolen child for 10 years without knowing. The federal case, Mark said. Why haven't they moved yet? Same reason most organized crime cases take years. They want everyone. If they arrest Welch tomorrow, the rest of the network goes underground. They need financial records, testimony from participants, documented patterns. They need an airtight case. But Walsh is close. 6 months, maybe a year. That's too long. For what? Mark met Nicholas's eyes. For Rose to be safe. If Elizabeth knows I have that video, knows I've taken Rose and disappeared, she's going to panic. Welch is going to panic. They're going to either try to eliminate witnesses or flee the country. Either option puts Rose in danger. Which is why you need to go to the feds. Protective custody. Let them handle. Protective custody for how long? A year? 2. While Rose hides and loses her childhood. While lawyers drag it out. Mark shook his head. No. Mark, whatever you're thinking. I'm thinking these people hurt my daughter. They've hurt hundreds of children. And I'm thinking the federal government is careful and methodical, which is great for building cases, but bad for immediate action. Mark leaned forward. I'm an architect, Nicholas. I see structures. I see weak points. I see how to make things collapse efficiently. You're talking about vigilante justice. I'm talking about protecting my daughter and making sure the people who hurt her face consequences. Fast consequences. Permanent consequences. Nicholas studied him for a long moment. I could arrest you right now for conspiracy. But you won't. Because you showed me that video knowing what it would make me want to do. The detective's silence was confirmation. I need 2 things from you, Mark said. First, I need you to look the other way for 2 weeks. Don't tell Walsh I contacted you. Don't mention Rose. Let me work. And second, give me access to whatever surveillance you have on Global Family Solutions locations. I need to know where they operate, when, who comes and goes. Mark, you said you have kids. You said that's why you showed me the video. Help me protect mine. Help me stop these people before they hurt anyone else. Nicholas was quiet for a long time. Finally, he pulled out a flash drive and slid it across the table. You didn't get this from me. If anyone asks, I never saw you after the birthday party. Thank you. Don't thank me. Just. Nicholas stood to leave. Make it count. Make them pay. But don't get yourself killed. Rose needs her father. Mark pocketed the flash drive and left the mall. He drove to a Best Buy and purchased a burner laptop, paying cash, no trail. Then he found a library in Quincy and plugged in the flash drive. What he found was comprehensive. Surveillance photos from 6 different locations where Global Family Solutions operated, including the Back Bay brownstone, 2 warehouses in industrial areas, and office space in the Seaport District. The drive included guard schedules, delivery times, license plates of regular visitors, and even blueprints for some of the buildings, public record, but compiled here for easy reference. Mark studied the blueprints with his architect's eye. The Seaport office was the public face, too well monitored for what Mark had in mind. But the warehouses were different. Industrial areas with less security, fewer cameras, more opportunities for access. The Back Bay brownstone was Major Welch's personal property. For stories, expensive neighborhood, but old construction. Mark studied the building plans, noting the gas lines, electrical systems, structural elements. An idea began forming. Not just revenge. Not just protection. Something bigger. Mark pulled out his new burner phone and called Carl's landline. It's me. How's Rose? She's great. Already figuring out how to code. Kid's got natural talent. Good. Listen, I need you to do something for me. You still do the freelance penetration testing for corporations? Yeah, why? Can you get into Global Family Solutions computer network? A pause. Probably. Give me their information. What am I looking for? Everything. Financial records, correspondence, client lists, locations. I want to know every operation they run, every person they work with, every dollar they've moved. Mark, that's seriously illegal without a warrant. I know. Can you do it? Another pause, longer this time. Yeah, I can do it. Give me 48 hours. Mark hung up and stared at the surveillance photos on the screen. He thought about Rose's face when she'd shown him the video. The fear in her eyes. The brave way she'd tried to protect him by making him promise not to tell Elizabeth. He thought about the children in that warehouse. The little girl Elizabeth had grabbed. The hundreds of others who'd been stolen, sold, lost. Mark had built his career on creating safe spaces, on designing homes where families could flourish. Elizabeth and Major Welch had built their fortune on destroying those very things. It was time to return the favor. Chapter 4. The Architecture of Ruin. For the next 3 days, Mark Richard became someone else. Not a father. Not an architect. Something harder, colder, more focused. He rented a small storage unit in Brockton under the name Anderson Floyd, the alias he'd used at the motel. Inside, he set up a workspace, folding table, the burner laptop, corkboard for photos and notes, maps of Boston marked with Global Family Solutions locations. It looked like a detective's murder board, except Mark wasn't investigating a crime. He was planning the systematic destruction of an organization. Carl called on day 2. "You've got to see this. Coming through your email." Mark logged into the secure account Carl had set up. The attached files made his blood pressure spike. Carl had penetrated Global Family Solutions network completely. Financial records going back 5 years. Internal emails. Client databases. Location manifest showing where children were being held at any given time. Employee records revealing how many people were complicit in the trafficking operation. 23 people worked for Global Family Solutions in various capacities. Most seemed to be legitimate administrative staff who handled the nonprofit's public-facing work, grant applications, speaking engagements, publicity. But 7 individuals appeared repeatedly in the hidden financial records and encrypted communications: Major Welch, Elizabeth, and 5 others whose names Mark now memorized. Marcus Welch, Major's nephew, handled logistics, transportation, warehouses, security. Dolores Cortez, legal counsel, created false documentation and managed the maze of shell companies. Bernie A. Baer, recruitment specialist, which apparently meant finding vulnerable families overseas. Kathleen Walsh. No, wait. Different Kathleen. This one was Kathleen Marshall, spelled differently. Finance director, moving money through offshore accounts. And Anderson Floyd. Mark stared at the name, the alias he'd randomly chosen. Anderson Floyd was listed as a senior consultant, but appeared in almost no documentation beyond quarterly payment records. Major amounts. Hundreds of thousands of dollars per year. Mark searched for information on Anderson Floyd separately from the Global Family Solutions files. What he found sent chills down his spine. Anderson Floyd was a ghost. The name appeared in connection with international adoption agencies that had been shut down for fraud. Private investigation firms that specialized in tracking people. A Lithuanian criminal organization that federal authorities had connected to human trafficking in Eastern Europe. Anderson Floyd was their fixer, the person who made problems disappear. And Mark had accidentally used his name as an alias. He immediately called Carl. "I've got a problem." After explaining, Carl was silent for several seconds. Okay, don't panic. You've been using cash everywhere, right? No credit cards. All cash. And the motel clerk barely looked at you? Didn't even glance up. Then you're probably fine. But Mark, this tells us something important. Global Family Solutions has someone whose entire job is eliminating threats. If they know you're investigating them. I'm already a dead man walking, Mark finished. Which means I need to move faster. Or go to the feds right now. Not yet. I need leverage first. Did you find anything about Rose's adoption? Searching now. Give me another day. Mark spent the next 8 hours cross-referencing the files Carl had sent with the surveillance information from Nicholas. A pattern emerged. Every third Wednesday, Major Welch personally oversaw transfers at the primary warehouse in Dorchester. The location was an old textile factory, purchased through a shell company 3 years ago. The surrounding area was industrial, mostly abandoned, with minimal police presence. Every third Wednesday at 8 p.m., a shipment arrived. Children were processed, photographed, documented with false records, given temporary identification. Then they were distributed to holding locations across New England until adoptions could be finalized. The next third Wednesday was in 6 days. Mark pulled up the blueprints for the textile factory. For stories, concrete and steel construction, single loading dock entrance, minimal windows, fire exits that had been modified illegally to be harder to open from inside. They'd turned the building into a prison. Mark's phone buzzed. Elizabeth. She'd been calling every few hours from different numbers. Her cell, the home phone, numbers Mark didn't recognize. He never answered, but he read the voicemails. Her tone had progressed from concern to angry to something that sounded almost like fear. Mark, wherever you are, we need to talk. I know things look bad, but you don't understand the full picture. Please call me. For Rose's sake. You're putting Rose in danger by doing this. There are people who won't hesitate to hurt both of you if they think you're a threat. Come home. Let's talk like adults. The most recent message, left at 2 a.m. I know you've been talking to people. I know you have information. Mark, please. I never wanted it to be like this. I can help you. I can protect you both. But you have to come home now. The desperation in her voice would have moved him once. Now it just confirmed what Mark suspected. Elizabeth knew he was a threat, and she was either genuinely afraid or setting a trap. Either way, he wasn't taking the bait. On day 4, Mark reached out to someone he'd been avoiding. His mother. Marion Poole had remarried 5 years ago, finally finding happiness with a retired firefighter named Herschel Clements. They lived in a modest house in Quincy, close enough to Mark's family that they saw each other for holidays, but distant enough to maintain independence. Mark met his mother at a coffee shop far from anywhere Elizabeth would think to look. Marion took one look at her son's face and grabbed his hands. "What's wrong?" "Mom, I need you to not ask questions. I need you to just listen and trust me." Marion's eyes filled with tears, but she nodded. "Elizabeth is involved in something very bad. Rose and I are safe, but we can't come home. I need you to not tell anyone, and I mean anyone, that you've seen me. If Elizabeth contacts you, if anyone asks about Rose, you don't know anything." "Mark, what has she done?" "I can't tell you. But it's serious enough that Rose is hidden somewhere safe, and I'm working to make sure Elizabeth and the people she works with can never hurt anyone again. My granddaughter is fine. She's with someone I trust. But Mom, I need you to be ready. When this is over, when everything comes out, it's going to be ugly. The media, investigations, people asking questions. I need you to be strong and protect Rose from as much of it as possible." Marion squeezed his hands. "Whatever you need. You know that. I need you to do one specific thing. In exactly 1 week, I'm going to send you information, documents, evidence. The moment you receive it, I need you to take it directly to the FBI field office in Boston. Ask for Assistant U.S. Attorney Kathleen Walsh. Give the documents only to her. Can you do that?" "Of course. But Mark, why not just go to them now?" "Because I need to finish something first." After leaving his mother, Mark returned to his storage unit and pulled up the financials Carl had extracted. $2 million in Elizabeth's offshore accounts. Major Welch had over $8 million. The others had varying amounts, but all substantial. Dirty money built on stolen children. Mark opened a new file and began designing something he'd never designed before. Not a building, but its opposite. A systematic demolition. Physical structures had multiple interdependent systems. Remove enough supports, and the whole thing collapsed. Organizations work the same way. Remove leadership, money, communication, and legal protection simultaneously, and even a sophisticated operation like Global Family Solutions would implode. Phase 1. Eliminate their fixer. Anderson Floyd was their insurance policy against threats. Without him, they'd be vulnerable. Phase 2. Expose their finances. If Mark could get evidence of the money laundering to federal prosecutors, it would freeze their accounts and eliminate their ability to flee or pay for expensive lawyers. Phase 3. Document the children. Prosecutors needed evidence connecting specific children to the trafficking operation. Mark would get it for them. Phase 4. Major Welch personally. Whatever happened to the organization, Welch needed to face consequences that went beyond prison. It was ambitious, probably impossible, definitely illegal in multiple ways. Mark didn't care. Carl called that evening. "Found something about Rose's adoption. You should sit down." Mark was already sitting, but he braced himself. Rose's biological family is in Romania, village called Sighisoara. According to the internal records, Bernie A. Bear approached the family 8 years ago. Father was sick, mother struggling with 4 kids. A. Bear promised the youngest daughter, Rose, would go to a wealthy American family, get education, opportunities. They were paid $5,000. Do the records say if the family knew it wasn't legal adoption? Unclear. But Mark, there's more. The family has been looking for Rose. The father died 3 years ago, but the mother and siblings filed multiple inquiries through Romanian authorities. Global Family Solutions intercepted those inquiries and buried them. Mark closed his eyes. Rose had family looking for her. A mother who'd never stopped searching. Can you contact them? The biological family. Risky. If Global Family Solutions is monitoring for contact attempts, they're about to have bigger problems than monitoring. Contact the family. Tell them Rose is safe and loved. Tell them I'll make sure they're reunited when this is over, if that's what Rose wants. But warn them to stay quiet until they hear from U.S. authorities. You're really doing this, Carl said. You're actually going to take them down. Yes. Need help? You've already done more than enough. Just keep Rose safe. She's asking about you. Wants to know when you're coming. Soon, Mark said, hoping it was true. Tell her soon. After hanging up, Mark sat in his storage unit and stared at his murder board. Photos of Major Welch, Elizabeth, and the others. Maps of their locations. Financial flow charts. Evidence files. He'd spent his adult life building things, creating spaces where people felt safe. Now he was about to tear down an empire that destroyed safety for profit. The symmetry felt right. Mark pulled out his burner phone and composed a message he'd been drafting for days. Short, direct, untraceable. I know what you did. I have proof. Meet me Wednesday at the Dorchester facility. Come alone. Tell no one. Or everything goes to the feds tonight. He sent it to Major Welch's private cell phone number, the one only 7 people in the organization had, according to Carl's files. Then Mark shut down his laptop, locked the storage unit, and drove to a cheap motel in Braintree. He had 6 days to prepare for Wednesday. 6 days to set the trap. 6 days to become the kind of man who could face monsters and win. He thought about Rose, safe with Carl in New Hampshire, learning to code, and probably worrying about her father. He thought about a mother in Romania who'd been searching for her daughter for years. He thought about hundreds of other children who'd been stolen, sold, lost. And he thought about Elizabeth, who'd looked him in the eye every day for 11 years and never once revealed the monster she really was. Wednesday couldn't come fast enough. Chapter 5. The Message in the Static. Major Welch received the text at 3:47 p.m. on Thursday. He was in his back bay brownstone, reviewing quarterly financials with Kathleen Marshall, when his private phone buzzed. He read the message 3 times. Then he stood abruptly, crossed to his study, and locked the door. 20 minutes later, Elizabeth Richard received a call. We have a problem. What kind of problem? Your husband kind of problem. He contacted me. Says he has proof. Wants a meeting Wednesday. Elizabeth's hands went cold. She was in her car outside a Target in Dedham, having spent the week trying to track Mark's movements through credit card transactions that never materialized. He'd gone completely off-grid. How did he get your private number? That's the question, isn't it? Major's voice was tight with controlled anger. Elizabeth, what exactly does your husband know? I don't know. He took Rose and disappeared. Won't answer calls. I've been trying to. Trying isn't good enough. If he has access to our internal communications, to our financial records, to our locations, do you understand what that means? Elizabeth did understand. It meant everything they'd built was at risk. It meant federal prosecutors might finally get the evidence they needed. It meant prison, asset forfeiture, lives destroyed. I'll find him, Elizabeth said. I'll handle it. You've had a week to handle it. Now we do it my way. Major was quiet for a moment. Wednesday. If he wants a meeting, we'll give him one. But not alone. And not the way he's expecting. Major, he's still Rose's father. He's a threat. You want to protect your daughter? Make sure her father doesn't destroy everything and leave her with nothing. No family, no home, no future. The line went dead. Elizabeth sat in the Target parking lot, her hands shaking. She'd known this day might come. She'd prepared for it, in a distant, theoretical way. But the reality was different. Mark, steady, boring, oblivious Mark, had somehow become dangerous. She thought about the video Nicholas Strickland had taken. She'd known about the detective's surveillance for months. They'd been careful, but Strickland was persistent. When he'd shown up at the Christensen birthday party, Elizabeth had realized immediately what must have happened. She'd hoped Mark would come to her. Hoped they could talk, negotiate, find a solution. But Mark had done what she'd never expected. He'd taken Rose and run. He'd shown spine, strategy, the traits she'd fallen in love with 15 years ago, before work had dulled him into a compliant husband who asked no questions. Now those same traits were going to get him killed. Elizabeth drove to the back bay brownstone. Major was in his study, along with the man Elizabeth had learned not to ask questions about. Anderson Floyd sat in the leather chair by the window, his posture relaxed, his eyes dead. Floyd was maybe 55, with the kind of face that disappeared in crowds. Unremarkable features, average height, no distinguishing characteristics except for hands that moved with unsettling precision. Mrs. Richard, Floyd said. His voice was mild, almost pleasant. Your husband has become interesting. He's scared, Elizabeth said. He's trying to protect Rose. If we can just talk to him. People who run don't want to talk. They want leverage. Floyd pulled out a tablet and showed Elizabeth a map. Your husband has been moving carefully. Cash transactions only. Burner phones. Storage unit in Brockton rented under a false name. He's had help. What kind of help? Technical help. Someone cracked our network 4 days ago. Very sophisticated penetration. We've been quietly monitoring the breach to see what they access. They've copied financial records, internal communications, client databases. Everything we'd prefer federal prosecutors didn't have. Elizabeth felt sick. How is that possible? Our security is very good, which means your husband knows someone exceptional. Floyd smiled, and it was the most unsettling expression Elizabeth had ever seen. I'd like to meet this person. Professional curiosity. Wednesday, Major interrupted. Mark wants a meeting. We'll give him one. But we set the terms. What terms? Elizabeth asked. Floyd answered. We let him think he's in control. Let him think he can negotiate. Meanwhile, we identify his helper, eliminate the leverage, and resolve the situation permanently. You mean kill him? I mean resolve the situation, Floyd repeated. Your husband is spiraling, Mrs. Richard. He's going to do something desperate. When desperate people have evidence, they tend to share it widely. We need to intercept that evidence before it reaches federal authorities, which means we need to find where he's hidden it and who helped him obtain it. And Rose. Elizabeth's voice cracked despite her efforts to stay composed. What happens to my daughter? That depends entirely on how cooperative you are, Floyd said. Children are resilient. They adapt. If you help us resolve this quickly, Rose never needs to know the details. She'll mourn her father. You'll comfort her. Life continues. But if your husband shares that evidence, if the feds move on us before we've had time to prepare exits, well, your daughter becomes evidence too. And evidence gets locked away. The threat was clear. Help them, and Rose stayed with Elizabeth. Refuse, and Rose would be taken into protective custody, probably never returned. Elizabeth had made terrible choices, she knew that. She'd rationalized them for years. The children they moved came from desperate situations, were being given opportunities, better lives. She'd stopped asking hard questions long ago because asking meant acknowledging the truth. She was profiting from stolen children. But Rose was different. Rose was hers, regardless of how she'd come into Elizabeth's life. And Elizabeth would do anything to keep her. What do you need from me? Major relaxed slightly. For now, stay visible. Go home. Act worried, but not suspicious. If Mark contacts you directly, arrange a meeting, but let us know immediately. Wednesday, we'll use the Dorchester facility like he requested. But we'll be ready. Ready for what? For whatever your husband is planning, Floyd said. People don't ask for meetings unless they have something to trade. We need to know what that is before we make any permanent decisions. Elizabeth left the brownstone feeling hollowed out. She drove home to the house she'd shared with Mark for 7 years, walking through rooms that felt haunted by the ghost of their marriage. She'd met Mark at a vulnerable time. Her previous work in social services had ended badly, a case where she'd followed protocol and a child had died anyway. She'd been drinking too much, questioning everything, when Major Welch had approached her with an opportunity. International adoption consulting. Good money. Meaningful work. Helping children find families. It had seemed legitimate at first. Maybe it even had been, in the beginning. But gradually, Elizabeth had realized the truth. The families weren't always willing. The adoptions weren't always legal. The children weren't always given good homes. By then, she'd been in too deep to leave. And the money had made everything else tolerable. She'd adopted Rose as insurance, in a way. If she had a child of her own, it made the whole operation seem more legitimate. Made Elizabeth seem like someone who cared about children, not someone who trafficked them. But something unexpected had happened. She'd actually loved Rose. The little girl had been so small, so scared when Elizabeth first brought her home. And slowly, carefully, Rose had learned to trust her, to love her back. For 8 years, Elizabeth had maintained 2 separate identities. At work, she was efficient, calculating, ruthless about moving product. She'd trained herself to think of the children as product because thinking of them as human made the work impossible. At home, she was mom. She'd been good at it, better than she expected. Now both identities were collapsing. Mark knew the truth. Rose knew something terrible about her mother. And Elizabeth was trapped between protecting her daughter and protecting herself. Her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. You have 3 choices. Help them find me, walk away and disappear, or testify against them. Choose carefully. Rose's life depends on it. Mark. He'd somehow gotten her number despite her changing it twice in the past week. Elizabeth stared at the message. Help them meant Rose stayed with her, but Mark died. Walk away meant losing everything, including probably Rose. Testify meant destroying her own life to take down the organization. 3 impossible choices. She typed a response. Let me see Rose. Let me talk to her. Then I'll decide. The reply came instantly. No. Choose now. You have until Wednesday. Elizabeth threw her phone across the room. It hit the wall and clattered to the floor, screen cracked. She'd underestimated Mark completely. He'd always been so passive, so willing to let her make decisions. She'd forgotten that he was brilliant in his own right, that his patient, methodical approach to architecture meant he could plan, strategize, outmaneuver. She'd forgotten that threatened fathers were dangerous. Elizabeth picked up her phone and sent one more message to Mark's burner number. I'll walk away. I'll disappear. Just promise me Rose will be safe. No response came. Wednesday was 5 days away. 5 days to decide if she could actually abandon everything she'd built. 5 days to figure out if the woman who'd loved Rose for 8 years was stronger than the woman who'd trafficked children for 5. Elizabeth had no idea which version of herself would win. Chapter 6. Convergence. Mark received Elizabeth's message and felt nothing. No pity, no satisfaction, no vindication. Just cold calculation. She was lying. People like Elizabeth didn't walk away from millions of dollars and years of investment. They fought. They manipulated. They tried to regain control. But her message confirmed something important. She was scared. Fear made people sloppy. On Monday morning, Mark called Carl. How's Rose? She's great. Worried about you, but great. We made chocolate chip cookies yesterday. Kid's got talent in the kitchen too. Tell her I love her. Tell her I'll see her soon. Mark paused. Carl, I need one more thing from you. Something big. Name it. Wednesday night. I need you to send everything you've extracted from Global Family Solutions to 3 people simultaneously. Assistant U.S. Attorney Kathleen Walsh, Nicholas Strickland, and my mother. Time the emails for exactly 8:30 p.m. Include all financial records, communications, location data, client lists. Everything that could convict them. That's your insurance policy. That's my dead man switch. If something happens to me Wednesday, the evidence still gets out. Major Welch and his people need to know they can't just kill me and make the problem disappear. Mark, maybe you shouldn't actually go to this meeting. Send the evidence now. Let the feds handle it. I need to look them in the eye. I need them to know exactly who destroyed them. Mark's voice hardened. They stole children, Carl. They stole Rose. I need to see their faces when they realize they've lost everything. Carl was quiet for a long moment. Okay, but I'm calling the cops if I don't hear from you by 9 p.m. Wednesday. Fair enough. Mark spent Monday and Tuesday preparing. He purchased specific items from different stores across Boston, always paying cash, never going to the same location twice. Hardware stores, electronic shops, a sporting goods store where he bought a hunting knife. He studied the blueprints for the Dorchester facility obsessively, memorizing every structural detail. The building had weaknesses. Every structure did. You just had to know where to look. Tuesday afternoon, Mark broke his own rule and called Nicholas Strickland from his burner phone. This is incredibly stupid, Nicholas said when he answered. I hope you know that. I need you to do something Wednesday night. Don't ask why. Just trust me. What? At 8:30 p.m., you're going to receive evidence files about Global Family Solutions. The moment you get them, call for backup and get to the Dorchester Textile Factory. Address is 247 Harlow Industrial Way. Come heavy. There will be people there who need arresting. Mark, what are you planning? Justice. The kind that actually works. Mark hung up before Nicholas could argue. Wednesday arrived cold and clear. Mark woke in his storage unit. He'd been sleeping there, surrounded by his murder board, living inside the obsession. He showered at a gym, ate breakfast at a diner, and reviewed his plan one final time. Major Welch wanted a meeting. Mark would give him one, but it would be on Mark's terms, not theirs. At 3 p.m., Mark sent another text to Major's private number. 8 p.m. tonight. Dorchester facility. You, Elizabeth, and Anderson Floyd. No one else. I have insurance. If I don't check in by 8:30, everything goes to the feds. You want this contained? Show up. The response came within minutes. Agreed. 8 p.m. Come unarmed. Mark smiled. They thought he was an amateur. They thought he'd follow instructions. At 6 p.m., Mark broke into the Dorchester facility. The security was decent but not exceptional. cameras on the entrances, basic alarm system. Mark had studied security systems while designing high-end homes for paranoid clients. He knew how to bypass them. He entered through a loading dock service entrance, disabling the alarm with a simple code override. Inside, the factory was exactly as the blueprints had shown. Cavernous spaces divided into smaller rooms, offices on the upper floors, the main floor set up with temporary partitions creating holding areas. There were no children present. According to the schedule Carl had extracted, the Wednesday transfers had been moved up to Monday, likely a precaution after Mark's first message to Major. Mark had 2 hours to prepare. He moved through the building methodically, placing items he'd purchased in strategic locations. Small modifications that would be invisible to casual inspection but critical for what came next. He disabled exterior lights. He loosened bolts on structural supports. He created choke points and dead ends. He turned the building into a trap designed with an architect's precision. At 7:45, Mark positioned himself on the second floor, overlooking the main entrance. He had a clear view of the loading dock door. He was armed, the hunting knife strapped to his leg, and more importantly, his phone ready to trigger the insurance policy if needed. Headlights appeared at 7:50. A black Mercedes pulled into the loading area. Major Welch emerged from the driver's side, exactly as Mark had seen in surveillance photos. 62, silver-haired, military posture. He looked around carefully before entering the building. 2 minutes later, a second vehicle arrived. Elizabeth's BMW. She got out slowly, looking nervous. She'd dressed casually, jeans and a jacket, and kept her hands visible as she approached the entrance. At 8 p.m. exactly, a third vehicle appeared. A nondescript sedan. Anderson Floyd. Mark watched all three enter the building through the main loading dock entrance. They were cautious, checking corners, whispering to each other. Elizabeth had a phone pressed to her ear. Mark's burner phone buzzed with a text. "We're here. Where are you?" Mark typed back. "Third floor. Conference room. Come alone. All three of you. Anyone else enters, I trigger the insurance." He watched them confer, watched Major make a decision. Then they moved together toward the stairs. Perfect. As they climbed to the second floor, Mark descended via a service ladder he'd positioned earlier, moving silently through the shadows. By the time they reached the third floor and discovered the empty conference room, Mark was already repositioning. His phone buzzed furiously. Angry messages from Major. Threats. Demands. Mark ignored them all. Instead, he sent one final message. "You built your organization on trapped children. Tonight, you get to know how that feels." Then he triggered the first modification he'd made to the building. Electromagnetic locks on all the exits, powered by a battery system he'd rigged in the basement. Every door, loading dock, service entrances, fire exits, locked simultaneously with a solid clunk that echoed through the building. The three of them were trapped inside. Mark heard shouting from the third floor. Footsteps running. The sound of someone slamming against a locked door. At 8:15, Mark called Major's phone. "What the hell are you doing?" Major's voice was furious but controlled. "What you did to hundreds of children. I've locked you in. I've cut the power to the exterior lights so no one passing by will see anything wrong. And in 15 minutes, unless you give me exactly what I want, I'm going to release every piece of evidence I have about global family solutions to federal prosecutors. You're insane. This is kidnapping. You'll go to prison. I'm okay with that. Are you okay with being exposed as a child trafficker?" Mark let the question hang. "Here's what's going to happen. You're going to tell me everything. Where the children came from, where they went, the names of every client, every partner, every official you've bribed. Elizabeth's going to do the same. And Floyd. Floyd's just going to stand there and understand he's finished. Or what? Or I trigger my dead man switch, and you spend the rest of your lives in federal prison. But if you cooperate, if you give me the complete truth, I'll give you something in return." What? A choice. The same choice you gave those families. Leave your lives behind and disappear. Or stay and face what's coming. Your call. Silence on the other end. Then Major's voice, dangerous and low. "You have no idea what you've started." "No," Mark said. "You have no idea what you finished." 8:30. Decision time. Talk or run. Either way, you're done. He hung up and waited. Below him, in the locked building, three criminals were realizing they'd walked into a cage built by a man they'd underestimated. Above him, the clock ticked toward 8:30. And outside, A detective was receiving files that would destroy an empire. The endgame had begun. Chapter 7. The Confession. The factory was silent except for distant sounds of Elizabeth crying and Major Welch shouting into his phone, trying to reach someone, anyone, who could get them out. Mark sat in the darkness of the first-floor office, watching the live feed from cameras he'd set up earlier. He could see all three of them clearly. Major pacing like a caged animal, Anderson Floyd sitting eerily still on a metal chair, and Elizabeth leaning against a wall with her head in her hands. At 8:25 p.m., Mark made a call using the building's old internal PA system he'd reactivated. 5 minutes. His voice echoed through the factory. Then everything goes public. Unless you start talking. Talking about what? Major's voice came through sharp, angry. You want confessions? You think we're that stupid? I think you're practical. I know every offshore account you have. Every shell company. Every falsified document. I know about Romania, about Colombia, about the Boston families who paid you $200,000 thinking they were getting legal adoptions. I know everything. Mark paused, letting that sink in. What I want is simple. Elizabeth tells me the truth about Rose. Where she really came from. Who her family is. Everything. Major, you tell me about your partners, the ones who aren't in this building. The ones who'll keep operating after you're gone. And Floyd. Mark smiled coldly. Floyd tells me about the families he made disappear. The ones who asked too many questions. You're recording this. Floyd spoke for the first time. His voice was calm, analytical. Any confession we give would be inadmissible. Obtained under duress. I don't care about admissible. I care about the truth. You have 3 minutes. Major slammed his fist against the wall. You want the truth? Fine. Your precious daughter was merchandise. One of 83 children we moved that year. Her mother sold her for $5,000 because she couldn't afford to keep feeding her. We gave that little girl a better life. A rich American father who actually wanted her. You should be thanking us. Is that what you tell yourself? Mark's voice was ice. That you're helping? We are helping. Those kids come from nothing. We give them opportunity, family, futures they'd never have. You steal them. You traffic them. You profit from their trauma. Mark checked his watch. 2 minutes. Elizabeth, your turn. Tell me about Rose. Through the camera, Mark watched Elizabeth raise her head. Her face was blotchy from crying, but when she spoke, her voice was surprisingly steady. I picked her out myself. From a group in a Romanian facility. She was 3 years old, small for her age, but she had these eyes, these intelligent, observant eyes. I knew she'd be perfect. Perfect for what? Perfect for me. I wanted a daughter. I wanted. Elizabeth's voice cracked. I wanted to save one. Just one. Out of all of them, I wanted to actually give one child a real home, real love. So I chose Rose. I took her through our system, created perfect documents, made her legally mine. You stole someone's child and called it salvation. I gave her a life. Elizabeth shouted back through the PA system. Her mother had 4 other kids, a dying husband, no money. Rose would have starved or been sold to someone worse. I gave her education, safety, a father who loved her. Until you put her in danger by bringing her into your world. Until she became evidence against you. Mark's voice dropped lower. Did you ever love her? Or was she always just cover for what you really were? Silence. Then, quietly, both. I loved her. I love her. But yes, she was also insurance. Proof that I cared about children. Proof I wasn't a monster. You are a monster, Mark said flatly. One who convinced herself otherwise. 1 minute. Floyd, last chance. Tell me who else is involved. Give me names. Floyd stood slowly, looking directly at one of the cameras as if he could see Mark through it. You think you've won. You think locking us in here and recording confessions makes you smart. But you're playing a game you don't understand. There are systems in place. Protocols. Even if we fall, the organization continues. Even if prosecutors get every piece of evidence you've collected, most of our clients will never be charged. They're too wealthy, too connected, too powerful. Then I'll make sure the world knows their names anyway. The world doesn't care as much as you think it does. People want to believe adoptions are pure and good. They want to believe children are saved, not stolen. You'll expose us, and maybe we'll face consequences. But 6 months later, someone else will start the same operation under a different name. Because there's too much demand, too much money, too many children no one wants to claim. The honesty was chilling. Mark checked his phone. 8:29 p.m. 30 seconds until Carl triggered the email blast to federal prosecutors. Last question, Mark said. Rose. Does she have any siblings? Anyone looking for her? Elizabeth answered. A mother. 2 brothers, 1 sister. The mother filed missing person reports for years. We intercepted them all. As far as Romanian authorities know, the case went cold. Names. Her real name was Elena Popescu. Mother is Ioana. I don't remember the siblings' names. That information would be in our files, the ones your hacker already stole. Mark's heart clenched. Elena. His Rose had been Elena once. A little girl with a family who'd never stopped searching. Time's up, Mark said. At exactly 8:30 p.m., Carl's programmed emails deployed. Hundreds of pages of evidence, financial records, communications, and now the recorded confessions Mark had just captured. All of it sent simultaneously to Assistant U.S. Attorney Kathleen Walsh, Detective Nicholas Strickland, and Mark's mother. Mark had one more surprise prepared. You're not going to prison, he said through the PA system. At least, not tonight. What? Major's head snapped up. The doors unlock in 30 seconds. You can leave. Run. Disappear. Because I'm not interested in legal justice. I'm interested in making sure you never hurt another child again. And the best way to do that. Mark triggered the second part of his plan. The screens in the factory control room suddenly flickered to life, displaying a website Mark had built over the past 3 days. The site was simple, brutal, effective. Photos of Major, Elizabeth, Floyd, and the other key Global Family Solutions personnel. Their real names, addresses, associates. Complete financial records showing exactly how much money they'd made trafficking children. And testimonials. Heartbreaking accounts from families who'd been destroyed by the organization. I've just posted this to every social media platform, every news tip line, every watchdog organization and victim advocacy group I could find. I've seeded it across the internet so thoroughly that no amount of lawyers can scrub it all. Your faces, your crimes, your profits. It's all public now. Mark stood and walked toward the factory floor, his voice now coming from his physical presence rather than speakers. You're free to go. But everyone knows what you are now. Your clients will panic and talk to save themselves. Your partners will turn on you. Your money means nothing because every bank in the world will be looking for it. You can run, but you'll be famous. Internationally. As exactly what you are. The doors unlocked with an audible click. Major stared at Mark, his military composure finally cracking. You've killed us. No. You killed yourselves the first time you stole a child. I just made sure everyone else knows what you did. Floyd moved toward the door, his expression unreadable. You made a powerful enemy tonight. You're not my enemy anymore. You're nothing. Mark didn't move, didn't flinch. You're just 3 people the world knows are monsters. If any of you ever come near Rose again, if you ever threaten my family, what I've done tonight will look merciful compared to what comes next. Elizabeth approached slowly, stopping a few feet away from Mark. Can I see her? Rose. Can I see her one more time? No. Mark, please. I know I don't deserve it. I know I'm terrible, but I did love her. I do love her. She's my daughter. She was never your daughter. She was always Elena Popescu, stolen from her family. And when this is over, when the prosecutors sort through everything, she's going to get a choice. Whether to reconnect with her biological family or not. Whether to keep the name Rose or reclaim Elena. Whether to ever think about you again. Tears streamed down Elizabeth's face. I'm sorry. Tell that to the 400 children you helped traffic. Tell that to the families you destroyed. Don't tell me. Mark stepped aside, gesturing to the door. You're free to go. I'd recommend leaving the country tonight. By tomorrow morning, you'll be the most hated people in America. One by one, they left. Floyd first, moving with predatory efficiency. Major second, his face twisted with rage and defeat. Elizabeth last, turning back once to look at Mark. I hope Rose has a good life, she said quietly. Despite you. Not because of you. Then she was gone. Mark stood alone in the empty factory, surrounded by the evidence of evil. He felt exhausted, hollowed out, but also something else, clean. Like he'd burned away the lies and found bedrock underneath. His phone buzzed. Nicholas Strickland. Mark, what the hell did you do? I've got evidence files. I've got videos of confessions. I've got the FBI mobilizing a task force right now. Did you get to the factory? I'm 10 minutes out. Are you there? Yeah, but there's no one to arrest. I let them go. You what? I exposed them instead. Check the internet. Check social media. They're finished, Nicholas. Maybe not in the way you wanted, but they're done. They can't hide. They can't operate. They can run, but everyone knows what they are now. A long silence. Then, you're insane. Maybe. But Rose is safe. And 400 families are about to get answers about what happened to their children. That's what matters. When the police arrived, Mark surrendered peacefully. He was arrested for unlawful imprisonment, breaking and entering, and a host of other charges. He didn't resist. Because he'd won. Chapter 8. Aftermath. The next 72 hours were chaos. Mark was held at the Boston Police Department while federal prosecutors, FBI agents, and what seemed like every law enforcement agency in New England tried to make sense of what he'd done. The evidence he'd provided, combined with the recorded confessions and the website that had gone viral, had triggered the largest human trafficking investigation in state history. Assistant U.S. Attorney Kathleen Walsh interviewed Mark personally on Thursday morning. She was exactly what Nicholas had described: sharp, thorough, and deeply frustrated. Mr. Richard, you've both helped and hindered this investigation in ways I'm still trying to untangle. Did you get enough to prosecute? Mark asked. We got enough to prosecute everyone involved. Financial records, communications, documented transactions. It's overwhelming evidence. But it's also contaminated evidence. You obtained it illegally. You coerced confessions. You locked 3 people in a building against their will. Are the children more important than perfect evidence? Walsh's expression softened slightly. The children are always what matters. But the law is designed to protect everyone, including defendants. Your methods, they complicate things. Will they walk? Major Welch and Elizabeth Richard were taken into custody at Logan Airport attempting to board separate international flights. Anderson Floyd is currently missing, but we've issued warrants. The other members of Global Family Solutions are being rounded up as we speak. Will they walk? No, but their lawyers are going to fight every piece of evidence we present, and some of it may get thrown out. But you have enough? We have enough, Walsh confirmed. Thanks to you. And despite you. She set her pen down and looked at Mark directly. Off the record, what you did was reckless, illegal, and dangerous. On the record, you saved hundreds of children from ongoing exploitation. A federal prosecutor's office doesn't often say this, but thank you. Mark was released on bail Thursday evening. His mother posted it, mortgaging her house against his protests. The moment he walked out of the detention center, Marion grabbed him in a fierce hug. Your daughter needs you. Let's go get her. They drove to New Hampshire together. Mark's hands shook the entire way, from exhaustion, relief, and anticipation. Carl's property looked exactly like Mark remembered: converted barn, surrounded by woods, solar panels on the roof, the quiet sanctuary of someone who'd opted out of conventional life. Rose was outside when they arrived, throwing a stick for Carl's ancient golden retriever. When she saw Mark get out of the car, she froze. Then she ran. Mark caught her and held on tightly, both of them crying, neither saying anything for a long time. I was so scared, Rose finally whispered against his chest. I know. I'm sorry. But it's over now. You're safe. Did you stop them? The bad people? Yes. They can't hurt anyone anymore. Rose pulled back to look at him, her face serious. What about Mom? Mark chose his words carefully. Your mom made choices that hurt a lot of people. She's going to have to face the consequences of those choices. But Rose, I need you to know something. What she did was wrong. What she was part of was terrible. But the love she felt for you, that was real. People can do very bad things and still have good parts inside them. It's complicated. Is she going to prison? Probably. For a long time. Rose nodded slowly, processing. Uncle Carl explained some of it to me. About how there are people who take kids from their families and sell them. And he said, she hesitated. He said that might have happened to me. Mark's heart clenched. Carl told you. I asked. I wanted to know the truth. He said I was born in Romania, that my real name was Elena, and my real mom might still be alive. Rose looked up at Mark with those intelligent, observant eyes Elizabeth had recognized years ago. Am I going to have to go back? To Romania? No, sweetie. You're my daughter. Legally, emotionally, in every way that matters. No one's taking you anywhere. Mark knelt down to her level. But you have a biological family who never stopped looking for you. And when you're ready, not now, not until you wanna, we can reach out to them. You can learn about where you came from. Maybe meet them someday. if that's what you want. Do they want to meet me? They've been searching for you for 8 years. So yes, they very much want to meet you. Rose thought about this, her expression solemn beyond her years. Can I think about it? You can take all the time you need. This is your choice. Your life. I'll support whatever you decide. They stayed with Carl for 3 more days while the media frenzy built. Major Welch and Elizabeth Richard became the faces of what journalists called the largest domestic child trafficking operation in recent history. The website Mark had created, which his lawyers strenuously advised him to claim no knowledge of, had been viewed millions of times. Global Family Solutions clients were being investigated. Adoptions were being reviewed. Families were being contacted. It was messy, painful, and necessary. On the 4th day, Mark received a call from an international number. When he answered, a translator helped convey a message from Romania. Ioana Popescu wanted to speak with her daughter. Mark told Rose about the call that evening. They were sitting on Carl's porch, watching the sun set through the New Hampshire trees. She wants to talk to you. Not today, not tomorrow. Whenever you're ready. Through a translator at first, and maybe through video call. Just to see you. To know you're okay. Rose was quiet for a long time. Does she hate me? For forgetting her? No, sweetie. She could never hate you. You were so little when they took you. It wasn't your fault. Do I have to choose? Between you and her. You never have to choose. I'm your dad. That's forever. And she's your biological mother. That's also forever. Different kinds of love, different kinds of family. There's room for both. Rose leaned against Mark's shoulder. Will you be there? When I talk to her. If you want me there, I'll be there. Always. 2 weeks later, arrangements were made. A secure video call, supervised by family services coordinators, with professional translators present. Mark sat beside Rose at Carl's kitchen table, the laptop screen showing a modest Romanian living room. Ioana Popescu appeared, 42 years old, with Rose's dark curls and the same intelligent eyes. She was flanked by 2 young men, Rose's brothers, Adrian and Christian, and a teenage girl named Maria. When Ioana saw Rose, she broke down completely. She spoke rapid Romanian through tears, the translator struggling to keep up. My baby. My Elena. You're so big. So beautiful. I never stopped looking. Never stopped hoping. Thank you for finding her. Thank you for keeping her safe. Thank you. Rose cried too, though she didn't understand most of the words. But some things transcend language. The look in Ioana's eyes. The love that had survived 8 years of separation. The family that had never forgotten her. Mark sat beside his daughter, this little girl who'd survived so much, and felt something break open in his chest. Not pain, but its opposite. Hope. The possibility of healing. The call lasted an hour. Rose was exhausted afterward, emotionally drained, but also something else. Lighter. Like a piece of her that had been missing had been found. Dad, Rose said that night before bed. Can we visit them someday? Romania? Whenever you're ready. I think I'd like that. I think I'd like to know where I came from. But I want you to come too. Because this is where I am now. This is home. Mark hugged his daughter tightly. You're right. This is home. And no one can take that away from us. Ever. Chapter 9. Building New Foundations. 6 months later, Mark Richard stood in the Suffolk County Courthouse, listening to the judge hand down sentences. Major Welch, 23 years in federal prison for human trafficking, conspiracy, money laundering, and fraud. His extensive military service was noted but did little to mitigate the severity of his crimes. Elizabeth Richard, 18 years. Her cooperation with investigators and genuine remorse were factored into a slightly reduced sentence. She'd provided extensive testimony against other members of the organization, helping secure additional convictions. Anderson Floyd, who'd been captured 3 months earlier trying to leave the country through Canada, 32 years. His role in threatening and eliminating witnesses made him the most culpable in the judge's eyes. The other members of Global Family Solutions received varying sentences, from probation for low-level administrative staff who'd been genuinely unaware of the trafficking to 15-plus years for those actively involved. Mark sat in the gallery, Rose beside him. She'd insisted on being present for the sentencing. She wanted to see it end officially. When Elizabeth was let out in handcuffs, she turned and looked directly at Rose. Mouthed the words, I'm sorry. I love you. Rose didn't respond. She just watched, her face unreadable. Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed. Mark had prepared a statement, reading it quickly before ushering Rose away from the cameras. Justice has been served today, but this case is about more than prosecutions. It's about 400 children who deserve to know the truth about their origins. It's about families separated by greed who deserve reunion. And it's about making sure this never happens again. I'm grateful to the federal prosecutors, law enforcement, and especially to Assistant U.S. Attorney Kathleen Walsh for their tireless work on behalf of these children. Thank you. As for Mark's own legal troubles, the breaking and entering, the unlawful imprisonment, the vigilante justice, the prosecutors had quietly dropped most charges. His attorney explained it as prosecutorial discretion. Filing charges against the person who'd exposed a massive trafficking operation would be politically untenable and morally questionable. Mark suspected Nicholas Strickland had something to do with that too. Life slowly returned to normal, though normal now meant something different. Mark had left his old firm and started his own practice, small residential projects, working from a home office, spending more time with Rose. Money was tighter, but priorities had shifted. He'd rather have time with his daughter than prestigious commissions. Rose thrived. She'd started therapy, both for the trauma of learning about her origins and for processing Elizabeth's betrayal. She'd legally changed her name to Rose Elena Richard, keeping both identities. And most significantly, they'd traveled to Romania. The trip happened over spring break. Mark and Rose flew to Bucharest, then drove to Sighisoara, a medieval town in Transylvania with cobblestone streets and centuries-old buildings. Ioana Popescu met them at a small cafe. She brought Rose's siblings, Adrian, 19, Christian, 17, and Maria, 14. Also present was a family coordinator who specialized in reunification cases. The reunion was emotional, chaotic, beautiful. Ioana couldn't stop touching Rose's face, as if confirming she was real. The siblings were shy at first, but warmed quickly, showing Rose photos of her as a toddler, sharing stories about the father she'd never known. Mark watched from a respectful distance, letting Rose experience this reconnection without interference. But Ioana approached him on the second day of their visit. Through the translator, she said, "Thank you for loving my daughter. Thank you for being the father she needed when I couldn't be." "She's my daughter too," Mark replied. "And she always will be. I don't want to take her from you. I just want to know her. To be part of her life. You don't have to explain. I understand." They arranged regular video calls. Discussed Rose visiting Romania again the following summer, maybe for a longer stay. Talked about the possibility of Ioana visiting America once visa arrangements could be made. It was complicated, messy, and imperfect, but it was also full of love. On their last night in Romania, Rose and Mark walked through Sighisoara's old town, past medieval towers and orange-lit windows. "Dad, can I ask you something?" "Always." "Why didn't you just call the police? At the beginning, when you first saw the video, why did you do everything yourself?" Mark thought carefully. "Because I didn't trust them to act fast enough. Because I needed to know you were safe immediately. And because..." He paused. "Because some things are too important to leave to systems and processes. Sometimes you have to take responsibility yourself." "Was it worth it? Everything you risked?" "Yes. Without question. You're safe. The trafficking stopped. Families are being reunited. Would I do some things differently if I could go back? Maybe. But the outcome, this outcome, with you here, with your family, with justice served, that was worth any risk." Rose slipped her hand into his. "I'm glad you're my dad. I'm glad you're my daughter." They returned to Boston a week later. Life resumed. School for Rose, architecture projects for Mark, therapy appointments, occasional video calls with Romania, and the slow work of healing. 3 months after the sentencing, Mark received an unexpected letter. Prison stationery. Elizabeth's handwriting. He almost threw it away, but curiosity won. The letter was long, rambling, full of justifications and apologies. Most of it Mark skimmed, but one section caught his attention. "I know you'll never forgive me, and I don't deserve forgiveness. But I need you to understand, I did love Rose. That was real. Everything else about me was corrupted, broken, twisted. But loving her, that was the one true thing. I'm grateful she had you. I'm grateful she has a good man as her father. And I'm sorry I wasn't strong enough to be what she needed. Please tell her I'm sorry. Even if she never wants to hear from me again. Just please tell her." Mark showed Rose the letter. She read it carefully, then folded it and put it in her desk drawer. "Are you going to write back?" Mark asked. "Not now. Maybe someday." But not now. Rose looked up at him. Is that okay? That's perfectly okay. It's your choice. Years passed. Rose grew. She excelled in school, discovered a passion for computer science, Carl's influence, and maintained relationships with both her families. She called Mark Dad and Ioana Mama Ioana. She visited Romania every summer and spoke increasingly fluent Romanian. Mark never remarried. He dated occasionally, but his focus remained on Rose and his work. He designed and built enough homes to understand that the most important structure he'd ever create was the one that existed between him and his daughter, built on trust, reinforced with love, designed to withstand anything. On Rose's 18th birthday, she asked him a question that had clearly been building for a while. Dad, do you ever regret it? Everything you did? The illegal parts? Mark considered this seriously. Legally, I should say yes. Morally, I think I did what was necessary. The law is important, Rose. Systems matter. Due process matters. But when systems fail, when they're too slow, or too compromised, or too careful, sometimes people have to act outside them. I broke laws to protect you and stop monsters. I'd do it again. Even knowing you could have gone to prison. Especially knowing that. Because you matter more than anything else. More than my freedom, more than my reputation, more than playing by rules that weren't protecting innocent children. Rose hugged him fiercely. I hope I'm half as brave as you when I grow up. You're already braver than me. You survived something no child should experience, and you turned it into strength. I'm proud of you, Rosie. 20 years after that October night when Rose showed him a video that changed everything, Mark Richards sat in his study, reviewing blueprints for a new project. But this project wasn't a house. It was a non-profit organization Rose had founded, a family reunification service for children of human trafficking. Legal, ethical, working within systems, but pushing for reform. Everything Global Family Solutions had pretended to be, Rose was making real. She'd asked Mark to design their first physical office space. A building that would be welcoming, safe, a place where separated families could reconnect. Mark studied the plans with satisfaction. For walls, good bones, strong foundation. Space for healing. Space for hope. He'd spent his career building things. And the most important thing he'd ever built was standing in the doorway now, 30 years old, accomplished, strong, whole. Dad, what do you think? Rose asked, looking at the blueprints over his shoulder. Will it work? Mark smiled. It'll be perfect. Just like you. And in that moment, sitting in the home they'd built together, metaphorically and literally, surrounded by evidence of survival and love and justice, Mark Richard knew something with absolute certainty. He'd won. Not because he'd destroyed his enemies, though he had. Not because justice had been served, though it had been. But because his daughter was safe, loved, and building something beautiful from the ashes of trauma. That was the victory that mattered. That was the ending he'd fought for. And that was the foundation on which everything else could be built. This is where our story comes to an end. Share your thoughts in the comments section. Thanks for your time. If you enjoy this story, please subscribe to this channel. Click on the video you see on the screen, and I will see you there.